Elena Iosef is an intellectual property rights lawyer with Here Law. Great to have you here.
Hey, thank you for having me.
So what is the issue here? I mean, kind of from a legal point of view, do you hear that and think, yes, Nintendo is doing the right thing? It makes sense to protect your copyright in the way that businesses do all the time.
No, not entirely, because copyright is supposed to be a deal that the public makes with content creators. We're supposed to say, we allow you a limited monopoly over the content that you create in return for allowing your content to be disseminated amongst the public. And the deal is supposed to be that this monopoly is very limited to certain situations. And you don't have copyright infringement in particular cases where you have fair dealing. So in certain cases, for example, where someone is making a parody of copyrighted content, where someone is using something for educational content.
Or news, we have fair dealing, yes.
Exactly.
How long is a fair dealing? How long can you play something without worrying about copyright at all?
So that's the thing. It's all very, very fact specific, especially in cases like news or criticism. So for example, if you had a photograph, you could reproduce the photograph in its totality because you need to reproduce the photograph in order to intelligently comment on it. In other cases, for example, it doesn't make sense to reproduce the entire content, and then the dealing wouldn't be fair.
In this case, this is a whole new kind of genre, right? These are video game players who use the product from this company. So they may, even if they are technically violating the sort of fair dealing copyright use, is there kind of a logic in saying on the part of the company, we're going to find another way to address this? In the way that they're trying to now say they'll share the ad revenue. I don't know if that's going to go far enough for the game players, but what would the game players' position be on this?
I think the game players' position would be that they shouldn't be sharing this ad revenue at all because they should be exempted from any claim of copyright infringement by fair dealing laws, because these videos can be interpreted in particular ways, like criticism. Right now, news is no longer restricted to just the written word or even just major news channels.
But it did occur to me that it is content creation. In other words, the game doesn't exist on its own. Somebody has to be playing it, and the act of interacting with it, does it actually become then content that that person could have claimed to create, or does that take it too far? Can the owner of the game say, no, everything inside that game is protected by this copyright?
Again, it depends on the situation, because in a situation where you're showcasing the gaming content for 20 hours at a time, that's no longer fair dealing. Then you're just reproducing the game without adding anything transformative to it. But if you're adding commentary and intelligent observations, and you're commenting on the mechanics of the gameplay, then that's something worthwhile onto its own. So then you can say that not only you have a fair dealing exception, then maybe you're creating something entirely new.
One of the reasons this really caught our attention, partly because my son actually does watch these videos, so I was kind of intrigued by it, is though you get the sense that there's this sort of old laws, and then there's kind of new interpretations, new behaviors really around technology. Are the laws keeping up with how people want to do things? And do you kind of run into this bad PR where people say, we're not hurting anyone, we're not taking money from you, you're just a big bad corporation, and so the laws aren't really flexible enough?
Well, we did have the Copyright Modernization Act, where the Copyright Act was supposed to basically catch up with the reality of technology, but where the real changes are happening is in the actual interpretation of the laws. So recently, there was a case that came out that said streaming 30 seconds of a song can actually qualify as personal research into a song, and that's fair dealing, and you don't need to pay for those things because as a consumer, you're researching whether you like the song or not.
Right.
So in case law, there are all of these exceptions being carved out that keep up with technology, even though the law itself may be a little bit behind.
All right, we're going to leave it there, Elena. Great to have you with us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Elena Iosef is a intellectual property rights lawyer at Here Law.